76 million households, 7 million small businesses. J.P. Morgan hasn't seen unusual customer fraud related to the incident. So get out of the banks. Waiting in the wings is our good friend Dave Hodges. The Common Sense Show will be having a great show today. The Eurozone is coming apart, ladies and gentlemen, as well as the United States. What's happening is the markets that we're seeing go up, 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 up. And we look at the economies of the human beings in Western Europe and the United States, and they're going down, 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 down. And at some point, this will be a nightmare. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Dave Hodges, the Common Sense Show. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Free America. I am Paul Martin, sitting in for Randy Dances with the Chickens Yarborough today. We're glad you're here. It is the 2nd of October, 2014, in the year of our Lord, and we've got our good friend Dave Hodges, the prolific writer of the Common Sense Show. Dave, welcome. Well, I don't know if Dave's there yet. We'll get a hold of him here in just a minute. Dave, are you there?
Well, we're testing 1, 2, 3, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Well, it's good to have you on the show today.
Hey, it's good to be here. So Randy has a new nickname, Dances with the Chickens. Let's hope.
Dances with the Chickens, yes, every night.
Let's hope Randy's chickens don't transmit Ebola.
Absolutely. Well, everything else is going to. Well, just take it anywhere you go. There's so much news out there, my head is just spinning.
You know, you're probably about the 10th person that said that to me in the last 2 days. There is so much, can't keep up. In fact, I was having an email exchange today with the health ranger, Mike Adams, and that was exactly what he said to me, too. And you're absolutely right. I remember when I got into this role of an advocate, and my wife said, well, that's real good, honey. Do you think you'll ever run out of things to write about? She seriously asked me that.
Oh, no.
Oh, gosh, I'm probably getting 3 hours sleep a night, and I kid you not. There's just so many wolves at the door and so many demons out there to fight back. But I think the biggest one right now that's front and center is what's going on with Ebola. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to give a little history and tell you how the CDC is lying through their teeth, and I can use science to prove it. But I want to jump right to the present day. I wrote an article this morning, and it's entitled, "The CDC Does Nothing as Ebola Potentially Spreads from Dallas to Portland to Payson, Arizona to New York City." And I'm going to cover the Portland, New York City on my website at thecommonsenseshow.com tomorrow. But I covered the Payson issue today, partly because it's sort of in my backyard. Payson's about a 2-hour drive from where I'm at. It's an hour and a half northeast of metropolitan Phoenix. These people from Payson will drive down into the Phoenix suburbs like Scottsdale and Fountain Hills, and they'll shop at Sam's Club and Walmart and all those other marts, and then they go back up. Well, I'm really concerned about that now, and here's why. Take the case of Alan Mann, and I don't mean to disparage the man. I mean him no ill will. He's a man of God, and I respect that. He's a missionary who went to Liberia, and on his website, which is published in my article today, I have excerpts in the article, and you can link into his website. He fully admits that he was in Liberia. He's giving medical supplies to children, with one of the instructions being stay clean on the outside so Ebola can't get you. So he full well knew the risk when he's in Liberia about Ebola. Well, on September the 28th, he boards a plane from Liberia, and he travels to Brussels. This is the same path that this fellow in Dallas took. He's not screened in Brussels. He He flies from Brussels to Phoenix, and he's not screened again. Now, yesterday afternoon, just about this time, I received an email from one of his neighbors, and this lady wrote to me, and she was just freaked out. And and she said that my kids play with his kids, and he says he's in a self-quarantine. You cannot self-quarantine. Excuse me. The average person doesn't know what to do. They don't have the equipment. That's ridiculous to think you can self-quarantine. And she said, what's he going to do for the next 3 weeks when he has to eat? Their family goes down to Walmart to buy some food, or they go to a fast food place. And so I went to his website to try to confirm, what this lady had told me by email, and lo and behold, Paul, it was all there. The admission of Liberia, the acknowledgement of Ebola on his website, it's all there. And I can't believe the CDC is not interdicting people like this. I don't want anyone mistreated, but just for his safety, his family's safety, his community, and the country, this man needs to be quarantined. Well, I ran his name prominently in my article. And before people get their backs up and say, Dave, you're violating that man's privacy. Guys, the website's public. This information, he came out with about 80% of what I printed today, and about 20% came from the email, which only served to support what he said in writing. And as of this afternoon, his wife, Mrs. Mann, goes up there and says, well, here are all of his self-containment quarantine procedures, and they're a joke. They would do nothing to mitigate the spread of Ebola. And so it's kind of started a controversy up in the Payson area, which is actually up in the mountains as you climb into the Mogollon Rim, heading up into northeastern Arizona. And this community is divided. I got people writing to me on email, I'm scared, thanks for bringing this out, this is terrible. And then I got other people say, oh, you're a fearmonger. Of course, I don't know how I'm fearmongering when I'm taking the man's words and just printing them verbatim. In fact, I copied about half a page of his website along with some of the pictures to leave no doubt as to the authenticity of my claim. And here, the CDC knows. I called them today. They wanted nothing to do with me. Well, we'll take your name and number and have someone get back to you. And I said, yeah, I've heard that line before. So, Paul, nothing is happening with this guy. And just, and I don't disparage the man, but honestly, I do think he should err on the side of caution. He should go to local health officials, say, this is where I've been, this is what I was doing, and get screened. Now, here's the question. How many Alan Manns are there across the country?
Absolutely.
That's the $64 million question. I think it's starting to look like parts of our government, the CDC, the EPA, the NIH, they want this to spread. If they didn't want it to spread, they'd be doing due diligence, and they're not.
Well, you can tell they want this thing for a lot of reasons. Number one, you and I probably followed this from day one when it broke out in the capital of Guinea, which was a city of 2 million people with an airport, and then it goes into Liberia. All those countries should have been locked down. There shouldn't have been an airplane coming in or out except for maybe military aircraft taking in, Doctors Without Borders or whatever. But they haven't locked down anything, Dave.
No, they haven't. The guy in Dallas who has this, he went from Liberia to Brussels. Same thing.
All right, hang on, Dave. We'll be right back. You stay tuned.
Great Plains Power has been providing reliable electrical power systems in the Rocky Mountain area since 1992. Our systems rely on the sun to help make you self-reliant for your power needs. Solar energy can be scaled to fit any situation, from complete power independence to backup power for the short term. Our expertise focuses on standalone power, but we have extensive experience with utility interactive systems as well. Custom-tailored capabilities as modest as emergency lighting all the way to commercial-scale power. Great Plains Power is a full-service company. We service everything we sell. We provide and design turnkey packages, custom-designed system, and parts for do-it-yourself. With more than 20 years of specialized experience at your disposal, let us know what your power concerns or goals are. Reach us by phone or the Internet. Call 303-239-9963. That's 303-239-9963. Or go to GreatPlainsSolar.com.
Patrick Davis is a strong anti-tax advocate and executive director of the Colorado Liberty Alliance. Here is Mr. Davis speaking about Amendment 68.
I've spent the last 25 years fighting tax increases, but I know how important a quality education is to the future of Colorado. Now we have an opportunity to improve our kids' education without raising taxes. It's Amendment 68, and I'm voting yes. Amendment 68 permits Arapahoe Park to build a limited gaming facility which will create nearly 2,000 well-paying private sector jobs and add more than $400 million into our state's economy. And 68 will also pump $114 million every year into K-12 education, paid for with casino gaming revenue and not with increased taxes. If you want to help our economy and help our schools without paying more taxes, I recommend yes on 68. Thank you.
Paid for by Coloradans for Better Schools.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Martin sitting in for Randy Yarborough. It is the 2nd of October, 2014. We're here with Dave Hodges. His website is thecommonsenseshow.com. His article is up at the top of revolutionradio.org, just like it is just about every day. Couple of quotes, Dave. The present vast overpopulation, now far beyond the world carrying capacity, cannot be answered by future reductions in the birth rate due to contraception, sterilization, and abortion, but must be met in the present by the reduction of numbers presently existing. This must be done by whatever means necessary. That was the Eco-Earth Charter, Eco 92 Charter. If radical environmentalists were to invent a disease to bring human populations back to sanity, it would probably be something like AIDS. It has the potential to end industrialism, which is the main force behind the environmental crisis, Earth First. And there's just thousands of these. If a Black Death could spread throughout the world once in every generation, survivors could procreate freely without making the world too full. The state of affairs might be unpleasant, but what of it? Bertrand Russell, The Impact of Science on Society. How about that, Dave?
Well, those are all Fabian socialist quotes. The Eco Charter, one I'm very familiar with. I've actually used it in an article I've written before. You know, it's hard to ascribe motives. I get in trouble with my less conservative friends because they want me to come out and say that this is planned depopulation, but I will say this. It's beginning to look like, smell like, and it feels like it is depopulation. Let me get into some of the reasons why I believe this. I found a research study when I was writing about the Ebola outbreak, and it was a Canadian research study that began in 2009, and these were government researchers from their animal infectious lab, and they found over a 3-year period that Ebola could go airborne between swine and monkeys, and not that they think it could, and I published those results with the appropriate links on an article on my website. And then I thought, well, if it can go from swine and cross species and go to primates, you know, humans are mammals just like this. Why not humans? So I started searching, and I have access to university databases, and I got in and I found several dozen research articles that show that Ebola is indeed airborne under certain conditions. And let me give you a couple of examples. And I certainly don't want to gross out the listeners here, but I've got to be a little graphic here on this example. When Patrick Sawyer, who I dubbed Patient Zero, back in August, got on his second commuter flight in Liberia, he was symptomatic at that point. He vomited and had diarrhea in the toilet, and they obviously would have flushed it. Well, the research studies, I have 2 of them that show that when you do that, the Ebola becomes aerosolized in these particles, and they can be ingested, inhaled, go through pores, open wounds, thus you can infect. That's airborne, folks. But you don't even need a toilet, because I found a research study and then a second one to parallel this, and this one appeared in Lancet about 5 years ago, and what it said was that Ebola can live outside the body on surfaces, and they looked at two different strains of Ebola in this research. One was the regular Ebola, and the other was Ebola reston. And they found that at 53% humidity at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, they found that Ebola regular could exist outside the body for 104 minutes. And for Ebola reston, it was 242 minutes. Now, those are optimal temperatures, but I submit that this is starting to be released now in the fall, on the precipice of the coming winter. What do people do in winters? They gather inside. What's the temperature? 72 degrees. That may not be a coincidence, and it's one of the things that's got me thinking this could be planned. But it gets worse. The CDC owns a patent on Ebola. I kid you not. I found it. I published it. I've linked to it. Now, I did have a patent attorney on the inside connected with CDC research. I promised him I wouldn't use his name. He contacted me and says, Dave, they're really days away from getting it, but essentially your article's correct. Well, I'm looking at here that they have this patent. So regardless if it's now or it's next week, they own Ebola. And let me tell you, after careful deliberation, I had to think about what this meant. And it really stumped me for a couple hours, and then finally the light went on. If I own something inside your body, Paul, and then someone else comes along to medically treat it, they have altered my intellectual property, and therefore they owe me a royalty. The CDC is a private corporation, just like the IRS, just like the Federal Reserve. They operate with a government charter, and they are in the money-making business. And because they own the Ebola patent, they will get paid each time it's treated. But there's even something more formidable that will demonstrate to you why this is probably a created situation and this is a false flag. You cannot own or patent something in nature. So obviously, if the CDC owns a patent on Ebola, it's not an original Ebola, or it is a synthetic Ebola from the beginning, which was artificially created. And I submit that it was created by the Army Research Lab because they're involved in the CDC in the development of something else, but I bet that no one is listening today has heard of this unless they've read my website. And that's the fact that not only does the CDC own a patent on Ebola, there's also been an Ebola vaccine that's been worked on for 10 years by Crucell Lab. Now, since I've run this story, they've changed their website, but don't worry, in my articles, I did screenshots and copy and paste. It's all right there. They can cover all they want, but I've got the data. Crucell Labs, in 2004, announced that they were given a contract by Bill Gates with a $50 million infusion of cash to go out and develop an Ebola vaccine. In the third quarter of 2006, they tested said vaccine on two separate groups of 16 human volunteers. Now, this is where this gets really weird, Paul. What I was able to find in university database research on this was that they came out and said, well, the vaccine worked on monkeys. And I go, okay, well, I know they tested it humans. Where are the human clinical trial results? Well, they didn't have them published. But I did find that they said that the vaccine was not contraindicated for humans, and it's basically safe to use and won't kill them. And I'm thinking, well, what could really cause these research results not to be published? And then I thought, oh, that's right. The Army Infectious and Virus Disease Lab is involved from Fort Detrick. They've classified it. That's the only explanation. And then I've got one more. I've actually got two more smoking guns. Not only do we have a vaccine that's been out there for 8 years that the media is not talking about, I mean, that's been out there being tested, we also have now the National Institute of Health has bought the patent for the original Ebola vaccine from Crucell. So the NIH owns it, but it gets better. The mystery deepens at this point. Subsequent to my research, and it was like the sky opened up one night, and one finding led to another finding, and I'm pretty deep in this rabbit hole now, and I came across a group called the Global Fund. And I had never heard of the Global Fund, but the way I found it was I followed the money trail from Bill Gates. He gave the Global Fund 3 years ago $560 million. And so I went to the Global Fund website, and I've got the link on one of my articles, and they say that they plan to vaccinate everybody for HIV, tuberculosis, and Ebola. I didn't even know there was such a thing as an HIV and TB vaccine. It's probably in development. Now, Bill Gates is a businessman. He didn't put $560 million out there of his own money unless he expects a big rate on return for his investment. And I believe that not only are we going to have a false flag Ebola release, which is what we're witnessing now, but I further believe that vaccines are going to become mandatory, and this is how these people are all going to make money. They've all positioned themselves to make money off this crisis.
Well, it's the usual suspects. I had interviewed a couple weeks ago Dr. Rima Lobo from the Natural Solutions Foundation, and she dropped a bomb on the show. She was asking me if I knew how this started, and I said, not actually. And she said, well, the Doctors Without Borders were there, and of course they are funded by Mr. Gates and Mr. Soros, and so a lot of the villages to the east of the capital city of Guinea were called in, come get their vaccine, and so they plodded through the jungles and came in and got their vaccine, and they were told to come back in 2 weeks and get their other vaccine. And they marched back through the jungle, got their other vaccine, and 2 weeks later that broke out in Guinea.
She thinks that it was introduced by vaccine.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, the Natural Solutions Foundation is back in the news today. It's somewhere on the website. I posted so many stories today I can't keep up. But she stated on the show that they were prepared to ship in, I forget how many gallons of their nano technology into Liberia, to the Liberian government, their silver nanotechnology. And so far, these things have been stopped at the port and sent back to the United States, not once, not twice, but 3 times. There's another smoking gun.
Boy, oh boy, and a lot of the African officials have come out on the record. Now, our media is suppressing this. You actually got to go into Europe or actual African news agencies to get this. But a lot of the officials in the Western African nations are accusing the United States of releasing the Ebola virus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I posted 2 or 3 pieces on that. revolutionradio.org. Just click on the pandemic button and get ready to read. But, actually, one of them was a top university professor.
Yeah, I'm not surprised in the least. What's really mysterious is the fact that 3,000 of our troops are being sent there. And here's what bothers me. We have the best infectious containment and quarantine and hazmat suits in the world, best policies, most precautions, yet we have healthcare workers that were over there fully suited coming home with Ebola. That, number one, says it's being transmitted in other ways than what the CDC is admitting to. But number 2, if we have trained personnel getting Ebola over there in their healthcare worker role, what's going to happen to untrained soldiers?
Oh, absolutely. I was talking to John Moore day one. I mean, because you've got, the regular doctors and nurses over there that are dying in droves. They're taped up, and masked up, and goggled up, and everything that they can possibly do. And I think the last number I saw was 180, and it's probably double that. And exactly how are the troops going to protect themselves? I don't think they can. I mean, they're not going to live in 115-degree heat, 24/7 in a suit. It's just insanity. But in one of your articles, and me and John Moore were bragging on you a little bit the other morning on his show. But in one of your articles, you were stating you were perplexed about the 3,000 troops going in, and then it dawned on you that they were there to prepare to how to do a pandemic lockdown, quarantine. And I think you're right.
It's really crude what they're doing in Liberia. And I had to actually go through and piece together some YouTube videos to come to this conclusion. But it looks to me like in Liberia, where they have 2 quarantine zones, 2 biggest cities, 2 million people, 1 out of 3 people in Liberia are now quarantined, but they have 2 containment zones. There's non-lethal weaponry, rubber bullets, tear gas, etc. But if you get outside that, it's shoot to kill. And I actually have videos where you can hear the gunfire. You don't actually see anyone getting shot, but you know from the reactions of the people in the video what's going on. And I believe this is partly what they're training for as well, too. And we should probably get into that a little bit here, too, with regard to isolation versus quarantine. If you go to the CDC website, you know, they dress up the poop and try to make it smell really good. They say, well, we'll just go in and pluck the first few cases out there and we'll isolate them and everybody will be safe and life will go on as normal. And I say, well, that's nonsense because Ebola spreads too fast. Your ability to isolate is limited by the number of people that contract the disease, the virus. And so very quickly, it'll turn from isolation into quarantining. And here's what this means for Americans. All we have to do is look at Liberia. They are quarantining healthy people with unhealthy people. It's a death trap for the healthy people. This is why they're trying to escape, and this is why on the YouTube videos you hear the gunfire. Well, Liberia is not America. This is going to get really ugly in this country if it progresses to this level. I, and I'm sure many of my fellow countrymen, are not going to accept if I'm healthy and I don't have Ebola that my family's in lockdown and it's a matter of time until we die. So we're going to take our guns, our 150 million handgun owners, with our 300 million handguns, and we're going to try to break out. It's going to get really ugly. I mean, I can see that happening in America.
Oh, absolutely. Well, stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with Dave Hodges in just a minute, and we'll get our caller. Stay tuned. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Martin sitting in for Randy Yarborough. The call-in number is 877-254-7524. That's 877-254-7524. And Dave, we've got a caller. Welcome, caller.
Hey, how you doing, gentlemen?
We're doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. I was listening to your show, and I've been watching and listening about the Ebola, and I would suggest everybody go out there and get a book called The Hot Zone by Richard Preston. It was written back in, I do believe, the 80s. I think he's a credible writer. It's all about the Ebola virus and where they believe it came from, which supposedly is like a bat cave down in Kenya or someplace like that. He also discusses the Marburg virus, which was apparently created in Marburg, Germany, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I read the book. But it describes the Ebola and its symptoms and how you die from it. And you were mentioning earlier about how the troops down there are not going to be able to protect themselves. When you listen and you read how these victims die of this disease, you'll understand why there's really no protection from it, because it is a hemorrhagic, and you bleed out very badly, and it's not just internally, it's externally. So I would suggest everybody get The Hot Zone and read it, and it'll scare the pants off you, and if it doesn't get you off your butt, nothing else will.
Yeah, that book's on all talk shows all over the country right now.
Oh, I didn't know if it was or not. I don't listen to talk show except for you guys, so I don't really pay attention to that. But that book's a very interesting book, and it's obviously resurfacing with this outbreak. So, gentlemen, you're doing just God's work, and I'm going to keep listening and get off so somebody else can get on.
Well, thanks for calling.
You bet.
Also today, it's up on revolutionradio.org, as well as Dave's article, The CDC Does Nothing as Ebola Potentially Spreads from Dallas to Portland to Payson to New York City. And there's also a possible case in Utah. So we don't know where this thing's going to go, do we, Dave?
Well, I'm coming out with some stuff tomorrow. And, it's bad to be the only guy that has a good piece of information. I mean, something that's newsworthy, as you know. If you're going to be on the list, you want to be on the top of the list, and you want to spread the wealth. And I had a pretty nervous 12 to 16 hours yesterday while I was deciding what I was going to do with this. I didn't release this information on this man in Payson lightly. And he kind of did it to himself by putting it on a website. Had he not done that, I wouldn't have gone off that email solely. But now I'm moving on to other cases. I was contacted yesterday by a health worker, public health worker in Portland, and And he sent me some documents that someone else actually sent me about 17 days earlier. The internal communications between public health officials in Portland is general disseminated broadcasted information via the CDC. It's very noteworthy. If Ebola is not there, it's really clear they expect it at any moment. And along those lines, this gentleman sent this to me and then followed up with an email, and I invited him to call me. He's so freaked out. He called me from a payphone. I didn't even know they had me anymore. And so he got me on the payphone, and I told him, I said, if you're worried about the NSA, they got voice print analysis, and they could be listening, so he went ahead and did it anyway. So he told me they have 2 live Ebola cases in Portland, and they're suppressing the information. And I asked him how active the cases were. He said one was in the 3rd day, and this is yesterday now, so it would be the 4th day, and today the other case would be in the 3rd day. And I said, do you think they're going to release it? He says, no. He said, there's actually talk now about moving them to an area where they could make it look like it's more concentrated and less spread. And so that's a concern. And then from New York City, back on September the 13th, I received a communication, and because it was a standalone communication, I didn't think it was credible enough to run just solely on its own. But now, within the present-day context, it fits right in. This gentleman sent me some information from New York City that showed that a man left New York and went to Chile, and 2 days after being in Chile, he became symptomatic, started manifesting obvious symptoms of Ebola, first one in Chile. And the date of this was on September the 8th. He's from New York City. Ebola has a 21 or up to a 21-day incubation period. This man had Ebola while he was in New York. There's absolutely no question of that. Now that we see this in context with other things. And then there was one other piece of information I was sent from this bioacoustic lab from the East Coast yesterday. And I have the quote on today's article, and I'm going to expand on their press releases in tomorrow's article. But what's interesting is here is this scientific organization coming out and saying, look, we've examined and diagnosed people, and they mentioned 4 different states, and then they mentioned Africa. And then the director of research, Sherry Edwards, said in the email to me, and I put this in today's article, it sure is starting to look like it's man-made. So these are just the things that are beginning to cross my path. And I'd like to go back to the end of May, Paul, and I'm going to give a big I told you so. Dr. Jane Orient, who's one of the most well-known and well-respected physicians here in Arizona, I had her on my show. I did a telephone interview with her prior, and when the illegal immigration was breaking out, we were both concerned about Ebola. And the reason we say that is we knew there are thousands of West Africans involved in drug trafficking that are active in Central America with the Sinaloa Mexican drug cartel. And some of these people come north of the border carrying drugs. I had this fact confirmed by 2 unnamed Border Patrol agents who I've been in communication with since early June. And in these conversations I've had with Dr. Orient as well as these Border Patrol people, these guys are actively crossing the border. And Dr. Orient on my show said, Dave, it's not a matter of if we're going to get Ebola in this country, it's a matter of when. She took a terrible beating from her conservative colleagues that kowtow to the CDC, and I took a fair amount of criticism, too, for being a fearmonger. Okay, well, let's cycle forward from about May the 30th to today's date, which is October 2nd. It's here, folks. It's going to be all over the country. I don't know what the penetration rate's going to be, but we're going to see it in a lot of different communities. This was never about fear-mongering on my part or Dr. Orient. This is the #1 health threat in America today, and we've been warning about this since the end of May.
Oh, absolutely. I remember I read your articles first thing every morning. There's no doubt. It was also reported that the gentleman that's infected in Dallas was in Brussels for a full day. So it could be there, too. The piece this afternoon, I haven't posted it yet. Another possible Ebola case investigated in Utah. First Dallas, now Utah. Moments ago, Fox 13 reported that health officials confirmed that they are investigating a possible case of Ebola at Primary Children's Hospital. Primary Children said it is unlikely the patient has Ebola. However, officials are taking this opportunity to use the emergency plan they have been working on to provide maximum protection to staff, patients, families, and the greater community. Officials said they admitted a patient who has symptoms raising concerns about Ebola. So, I was talking to John Moore the other day. What I think they're going to do is let this thing get really embedded and then drop the hammer. You guys stay tuned. We'll be right back with Dave Hodges, thecommonsenseshow.com.
If catastrophe struck, would your family be prepared? Are you confident you wouldn't react in a panic? Is there one place to get all of your emergency supplies? Ferris Survival encourages you to have confidence through preparation, not panic through crisis. Ferris Survival, located at 3366 South Broadway, is a professional, reputable, full-service business providing quality, realistic preparedness supplies at an affordable price. Go online, stop by, or call 303-781-0343. Ferris Survival.
Are you prepared for the coming chaos? Whether you are planning a strategic retreat or you have one in progress, Square Root Construction would be pleased to offer our assistance. With nearly 30 years of construction experience, Square Root Construction can help with design, engineering, and permitting issues, as well as a host of general contracting services from foundation to finish work. For a limited time, we are offering exclusive discounts to the listeners of Randy's program. For a no-obligation consultation, please call Doug at 303-517-8742 or drop an email to strategicretreats@gmail.com.
Hi, folks. Guess what? We don't live in the land of milk and honey. We live in the land of farm factories, laboratory-processed, and genetically modified food. Yikes! That's Frankenfoods! And that's a food and health crisis. But hold on. I have a solution. Eat non-GMO organic superfood products. Ask me, Vita, about a $50 gift card for free product. Call 518-530-1060. That's 518-530-1060.
You can buy gold just about anywhere in the world from all kinds of different dealers. So why do you use the Patriot Trading Group?
20 years of service, just like that. A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, just like that. Lowest prices, just like that. No solicitation, just like that. Buying or selling, just like that.
For all your gold and silver needs, call the Patriot Trading Group at 800-951-0592. Just like that.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 1360 AM, Johnstown, Colorado, the Roar of the Lion. I'm Paul Martin, sitting in for Randy Yarborough. We're here with Dave Hodges, thecommonsenseshow.com. My website is revolutionradio.org. Here's a quote for you. There's a single theme behind all our work. We must reduce population levels. Either governments do it our way, through nice, clean methods, or they will get the kinds of mess that we have in El Salvador or in Iran or in Beirut. Population is a political problem. Once population is out of control, it requires authoritarian government, even fascism, to reduce it. That was Thomas Ferguson, former official in the U.S. State Department of Population Affairs, or as I say, your tax dollars at work. Call-in number is 877-254-7524, 877-254-7524. You want to talk to the man, you got him right here on the radio. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, this just gets curiouser and curiouser. I just got another email, and they're looking at another case in Portland, and this is from somebody different. I suspect it's the same case, and it's just a different person telling the story. And I'm reading through this right now, and started reading this during the break, and this is a little more detailed. And the CDC is on the scene, so they can say that they have it fully contained in Dallas, and end of story, folks, go home, there's nothing to see. That's not what the health officials up in Portland are beginning to drop on this. I've become like a magnet for this, and I think it's because I've been writing about it for so long. That's where people are turning. And I want to say something here to the rank and file. When you send an email to a talk show host, and you don't tell us that this is wholly confidential, because I hold things in confidence when requested to do so, and sometimes it causes me not to use the information. But the lady who sent me this thing in Payson today, well, I want you to take this out and that out. Well, I did a little of that, but you take out so much, you change the meaning. When you let the story out and the greater good is served by releasing the information, that's what has to happen. And what's really interesting is what I'm seeing in the community of Payson. There are some people that are scared to death and are thanking me for running this. And then there are some people who are coming to the defense of Mr. Mann. Oh, he's a nice man. That has nothing to do with the situation here. I can't believe people living in a community with such an obvious threat are banding together like this is some junior high clique, and they're worried about playing a game of popularity. That's the height of immaturity. If this stuff gains a foothold in enough metropolitan areas, this could kill 20 to 50 million people. It'll make the Spanish flu look like child's play. This is not a game. In fact, I'm going to try again with the CDC tomorrow, as well as Arizona health officials, to let them know this is what's going on. Let's go up and check this guy out in Payson. I don't want anything bad to happen to the man. For goodness sake, he's a missionary. He's obviously a really good person. But we can't allow these threats. And if you people know of a threat like this, you have a public obligation, not just to your family, but to your community and your country, to report said person contagious. And this is one thing that greatly disturbs me. You should see these things I'm getting in email out of Payson. Like I said, some of them are very responsible, and some of these people, I think I'm reading friends of my son's, who's 13 years old. It's like I'm reading their text messages. That's the maturity level I'm seeing here about, well, I meant to say this, but I didn't want to say that. It's ridiculous. Paul, I'm so disappointed that more people aren't taking this seriously. This is a very, very big deal.
Well, it's a huge deal. Kind of back you up in some of your other things you've been talking about. My East Coast source said 3 weeks ago, he said, you're going to hear 3 words: pandemic, pandemic, pandemic. He said, check your gear, double check your gear, triple check your gear. I can't see this thing not being airborne. Here's a little piece off. There was a great article today by the Washington's blog, Top Doctors Ebola may become airborne and may have already be transmissible through aerosols. 2 infectious disease experts say Ebola in its current form is already spread by aerosols. But perhaps most challenging to the mainstream assumption that Ebola can only be spread through physical contact with a person who is showing symptoms of infection is the following explanation by 2 national experts on infectious disease transmission. Both professors in the School of Public Health, Division of Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Quote, we believe there is scientific and epidemiological evidence that the Ebola virus has the potential to be transmitted via infectious aerosol particles, both near and at the distance from infected patients, which means that healthcare workers should be wearing respirators, not face masks. Aerosols are liquids or small particles suspended in air. An example is sea spray, seawater suspended in air bubbles created by the force of the surf mixing water with air. The important points are that the virus-laden bodily fluids may be aerosolized and inhaled while a person is in proximity to an infectious person, and that wide range of particle sizes can be inhaled and deposited through the respiratory tract. There you go.
Well, sounds like we read the same article. I'm pretty sure it's the same research I came across. Sounded very familiar. They went on to talk about the toilets. But the evidence is overwhelming. There are dozens of studies that show this. The CDC doesn't want to acknowledge it. But here's also what's going on, too. People have talked, I've received so many emails and comments to my website today saying we should have shut down the airports in Africa and so forth and so on. Well, there's one reason why we didn't. Africa's rich in natural resources, and we do a lot of trading there, and you'd have heard the screaming from Wall Street all the way to the White House. That's why we didn't do that. It was more convenient to put people's lives at risk than it was to hurt a few corporations' bottom line. But if Ebola gets a foothold in this country, we're going to see a business impact here like we've never seen in this country. Liberia's economy has come to a screeching halt. People are starving to death just as often as they're dying from Ebola. And that's because no one wants to drive supplies into the affected area. They could end up getting quarantined themselves if the wrong thing takes place. We're going to see the same thing here. If you have a quarantined city, how are you going to get food? I mean, we have just-in-time delivery with 3 days of delivery. How is a community going to maintain themselves during an active quarantine? See, when they quarantine your city, what they're basically saying is you're all effectively dead. You just haven't died yet.
Absolutely. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back with Dave Hodges. Don't touch that dial.
Great Plains Power has been providing reliable electrical power systems in the Rocky Mountain area since 1992. Our systems rely on the sun to help make you self-reliant for your power needs. Solar energy can be scaled to fit any situation, from complete power independence to backup power for the short term. Our expertise focuses on standalone power, but we have extensive experience with utility interactive systems as well. Custom-tailored capabilities as modest as emergency lighting all the way to commercial-scale power. Great Plains Power is a full-service company. We service everything we sell. We provide and design turnkey packages, custom-designed system, and parts for do-it-yourself. With more than 20 years of specialized experience at your disposal, let us know what your power concerns or goals are. Reach us by phone or the Internet. Call 303-239-9963. That's 303-239-9963. Or go to GreatPlainsSolar.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Phillips, founder of the Green Herb.
The people who are controlling the government of America are the same people who are trying to control your family's health care. You can sit quietly by and accept their plan, or you can take responsibility for your health. What would happen if you could no longer obtain the medications you're now taking? Would you be forced to join the ranks of corrupt agents just to purchase the medicine? If you're one of the thousands of concerned citizens who would like to know more about a natural way, God's way to help, drop by the Green Herb for a natural solution and all the information you need to make an intelligent decision. Or go to our website, www.thegreenherb.com. Come by the Green Herb, located in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, on the I-70 Frontage Road North, 1 mile west of Kipling, or call 888-765-HERB. That's 888-765-4372. And be sure to listen to the Green Herb Show with Linda and Dr. Cass every Tuesday at 1 o'clock on KHNC.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Martin sitting in for Randy Yarborough here with Dave Hodges. The CommonSenseShow.com is his website. This is out of the Wall Street Times, or the New York Times, excuse me. Ebola patient in Dallas lied on screening form, Liberian airport official says. Thomas E. Duncan, the Liberian man who developed Ebola symptoms in Dallas after flying from Liberia last month, lied about his history of contact with the disease on an airport questionnaire meant to screen out passengers who might be carrying the virus, and is subject to prosecution when he returns, chairman of the Liberian Airport Authority said Thursday. When Mr. Duncan flew out of Roberts International Airport in Monrovia, the Liberian capital, on September 19th, he answered no to a question about whether he had had contact with any person who might have been stricken with Ebola in the past 21 days, the maximum period of incubation for Ebola, Mr. Kessley said. Quote, he lied on his form. If he had answered truthfully, he would have been sent to a secondary screening immediately and not allowed to leave. And that just makes me think, Dave, how many other people would say no on the form and fly into the United States?
Yeah, that speaks to the whole fallacy of the enforcement here. It's all depending upon self-report. Yeah, I've got Ebola. I want you to quarantine me until I die. I mean, who's going to admit to that?
Exactly. Yeah, this thing is going to get out of control, and I think that's by design. You know, I was talking to my favorite Marine Corps colonel about 4 years ago now, and I said, Colonel, I don't think they're afraid of our guns. And he goes, why not? I said, you can't fight a 100 million man army even if 10% of them show up. That's still a huge army. I said, but they can lay us down. And the reason I was talking to him about that is he was in the bio business. And so, I mean, it's like being a good detective. You know, you get a little clue here, a little clue there, a little clue here. You start putting them up on the wall, and pretty soon you can't see absolutely everything, but you get a pretty good idea what's going on. Well, look at this administration. The wheels have come off of this. The Democrats aren't even using the O word on their stump speeches to get reelected. Congress has an approval rating somewhere like whale vomit in the Marianas Trench. The American people are shutting down the national media. They're not. The alternative media is rising. I mean, these people are scared. And even more important than that, as my East Coast source said before the last election day, he said, make no mistake, this administration has no plans of ever, and I say again, ever leaving the White House. And you know this well as I do, and probably most of the audience does, of all of the executive orders that this administration has published. They owned absolutely everything, including the Ebola, as we were talking about. So this solves a lot of problems for them. We could even shut down the elections in November, couldn't we?
Well, it could come to that. You know, time's going to tell how this is going to unfold. I think it's just timely for me to bring this up. Back in October of 2012, I was coaching in my last year of being a college basketball coach, and I got a visitor, and the visitor was from FEMA. And my relationship with this man goes back to my days when I was a Maricopa County first responder. They had come to my county, asked for volunteers, and oh, by the way, if we have a bio attack, you'll get the drugs first for you and your family. So I volunteered. Well, eventually FEMA absorbed the program, and I had to go to 3 meetings, and I was hooked up with this guy. And his role in FEMA was counter bioterrorism. And we got to be friends, and lo and behold, through the years, I had two of his 3 youngest daughters. I'll finish this on the other side of the break.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back for the second hour to Free America. You stay tuned. Don't touch that dial.
Constitutional Moments are brought to you throughout the day through the generosity of C&C Prototype Machine, Boulder, Colorado.
You can buy gold just about anywhere in the world from all kinds of different dealers. So why do you use the Patriot Trading Group?
20 years of service, just like that. A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, just like that. Lowest prices, just like that. No solicitation, just like that. Buying or selling, just like that.
For all your gold and silver needs, call the Patriot Trading Group at 800-951-0592. Just like that.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. This is the America News Network. This is The Lion, KHNC 1360 AM, Johnstown, Denver.
Second hour to Free America. I'm Paul Martin, sitting in for Randy Dances with the Chickens Yarborough. We're here with our good friend Dave Hodges, thecommonsenseshow.com. My website's revolutionradio.com. Here's another little aspect of what we're going to deal with, Dave. This is about 4 minutes old out of The Guardian. U.S. Ebola patient's waste not cleared from apartment 2 days after diagnosis. Health officials admit they were unable to find a waste management company willing to accept soil, towels, and sheets. Towels and sweat-ridden bedclothes remained for 2 days in the Dallas apartment where an undiagnosed Ebola sufferer was staying because health officials in Texas struggled to find a waste management company willing to accept them. We're going to run into a lot of problems here, aren't we, Dave?
Well, there's no question. And some of this was foretold. I was talking before we went into the break about my FEMA contact. When FEMA absorbed the volunteer program I was a part of with first responders, I got to know this man and then subsequently maintained a relationship with him and had 2 of his 3 daughters in my undergraduate classes. And he came to my office with his wife in October of 2012, and he said that they were bugging out. And he had been preparing for some time with like-minded officials from FEMA and DHS upon departure from those agencies to prepare a facility where they could get out of harm's way. And I asked him over quite a long conversation, what were the things that we really had to be worried about? And one of the things he mentioned to me was we have bioterror weapons that the rest of the world has no idea that we have. And we can literally turn people into zombies. Now, not zombies like the Hollywood movies, but people who are just berserk and out of control. And he explained how they did that. And he said, of course, there's good old-fashioned Ebola. He specifically had mentioned that. He also said that we will see the release of foreign troops in the form of martial law. And back to, what we're looking at here, and you really struck a terror chord with me when you said that officials in Dallas could not find a waste management company to dispose of that hazardous material. I started thinking, well, then that makes it a military operation. And let's go back to what I wrote about and said back in early June. When the UN vehicles were being sighted in the southern underbelly and the southwest of the United States, I was gravely concerned because this coincided with a massive illegal immigration influx, and that's where I had previously mentioned that Dr. Jane Orient, myself, and others like us were concerned about disease transmission, not just Ebola, but drug-resistant TB, scabies, and so forth. And I surmised, I actually wrote this in an article as a speculative piece back in early June. I said, I can foresee the day when we have an outbreak of something, Ebola, TB, whatever, and the UN comes in to be the rescuer because our hospitals and our emergency rooms and our clinics will all be backlogged. And they'll come in, they'll set up their little white tents with their blue helmets, and they'll act like they're the rescuers. And then, boom, we get hit with a false flag, and they go from being medical rescuers to martial law enforcers. And I do think the UN will help to usher in a medical martial law. And then when we have a false flag attack, which I really surmise it's going to be an EMP attack for a lot of different reasons, embedded within that, there'll be a cyber attack upon our banks. Then we're going to see hardcore military martial law using the foreign troops that I've been writing about, the Russians training here, the Chinese, and whatever troops that DHS can get their hands on. And this is where I think this is all headed, because if you can't get private agencies to do their job with waste management because of the fear of Ebola, I mean, that's going to be an excuse right there unto itself to bring in the military.
Without a doubt. And all of those plans that you were just mentioned, my East Coast source said months ago. He said martial law is locked and cocked. He said all he was waiting for is his red phone to go off. And he also said a couple of weeks ago, said the American people are really going to freak out when they start seeing Russian and Chinese troops on American streets. And we've got a caller. Come on, caller.
Hey, Paul and Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Hey, good. Paul, it's Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Dave, I'm a retired Marine colonel, and I'm also retired from I used to be operations manager for a BS.
Jim, I'm having you're really, really faint on your end. Maybe we can boost the sound a little bit.
Okay. Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me. I might have a dog bark here. I'm also a former manager of a biosafety level 3 laboratory. That is not a BSL-4. BSL-4 is the type of laboratory that would contain and control and do research on an Ebola-type disease. Paul and I have talked at length, and we've been talking about this specific scenario that we're living under today for about 3 years. It's been coming. What I've told Paul frequently is the moment that an Ebola strain can be, it would mutate to the point where it can be aerosolized and it can be transported from human to human by the expulsion of their human breath, then they would have a weapon that they could use for martial law, for taking over the country, for denying us our rights. And I've warned and cautioned everybody to prepare to resist at home and to create a castle of your own domicile and be able to have N95 masks and HEPA suits and plastic wraps around the inside of your building and to clean your water. So this scenario doesn't surprise me from that perspective. It surprises me by virtue of the fact that there are people that are willing to do that to other Americans. This particular strain of Ebola is the type of strain that the Spanish flu was in 1918.
Yeah, that's kind of the analogy that I've been making is with it as well. It sounds like this is following a course that you're familiar with. Am I picking up on that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Are you familiar with the scenario called Dark Winter?
No, but
okay.
There's another code name, and it's jumped out of my head. Tell us about Dark Winter, because I have a suspicion it's similar to what I was told over the weekend.
Well, the government always telegraphs what they're going to do. So, and I'll make a very quick history, and the call can get you, get me the email address. Oh, we're going into a break.
Yeah, hang on, Jim. We'll be right back. Hang on, Dave.
Okay.
Don't touch that dial.
Great Plains Power has been providing reliable electrical power systems in the Rocky Mountain area since 1992. Our systems rely on the sun to help make you self-reliant for your power needs. Solar energy can be scaled to fit any situation, from complete power independence to backup power for the short term. Our expertise focuses on standalone power, but we have extensive experience with utility interactive systems as well. Custom-tailored capabilities as modest as emergency lighting all the way to commercial-scale power. Great Plains Power is a full-service company. We service everything we sell. We provide and design turnkey packages, custom-designed system, and parts for do-it-yourself. With more than 20 years of specialized experience at your disposal, let us know what your power concerns or goals are. Reach us by phone or the Internet. Call 303-239-9963. That's 303-239-9963. Or go to GreatPlainsSolar.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Phillips, founder of the Green Herb.
The people who are controlling the government of America are the same people who are trying to control your family's health care. You can sit quietly by and accept their plan, or you can take responsibility for your health. What would happen if you could no longer obtain the medications you're now taking? Would you be forced to join the ranks of corrupt agents just to purchase the medicine? If you're one of the thousands of concerned citizens who would like to know more about a natural way, God's way to help, drop by the Green Herb for a natural solution and all the information you need to make an intelligent decision. Or go to our website, www.thegreenherb.com. Come by the Green Herb, located in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, on the I-70 Frontage Road North, 1 mile west of Kipling, or call 888-765-HERB. That's 888-765-4372. And be sure to listen to the Green Herb Show with Linda and Dr. Cass every Tuesday at 1 o'clock on KHNC.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Free America. Paul Martin sitting in for Randy Yarborough here with Dave Hodges. And I think Mike Golden's got a little report he wants to give on the broadcast. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate the time here. We've been getting a lot of calls here because about 3 weeks or so ago, everybody knows we had a major lightning strike up at the transmitter, took out half of our transmitter. We've been off the air and on the air and off the air and on the air for the last 3 weeks. Yesterday we had a catastrophic power failure in the area, took out the remaining portions of the transmitter. And so we have been working on that all day. We are not being edited or clipped by the government. It is the engineer out there working on it, turning it on and off rewiring and restringing and looking for different wires to twist. So appreciate all your calls letting us know. We're aware of the situation. We apologize for it. What a wonderful program this is, and how a big shame it is that it has to be interrupted. I will let you know that the repeats of this program will all be clear. All of that stuff is recorded from in here and not over-the-air situations. So the repeats of these shows, which will repeat now for the remainder of the week and the weekend, will be in their entirety unedited. And thanks a lot, Paul.
Thank you, Michael. And we're back with Dave and our good friend Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, I'll try to make this as clear but as brief as possible. Back in July of 2001, just prior to the 2001 attack on the trade centers, the United States government was doing a training scenario in Oklahoma City. Excuse me, I got some background noise here. In Oklahoma City, and it included the United States Department of Defense, the Congress, every agency that you can possibly imagine that would have anything to do with a bioterrorist attack. The scenario was called Dark Winter. I have the slide set from that scenario, and I can get it to Paul, and we can also send it out to anybody else who wants it. The slide set of the scenario basically was that a militarized form of the horse version of smallpox was introduced into Oklahoma City, Dallas, Oklahoma, pick your middle of the country city, who cares, was introduced into Oklahoma City by 8 people flying into Oklahoma City who had the contagion in their bodies. The scenario says, what would happen if a disease that is transmitted by the expiration of the human breath and has a mortality rate of 33%, which smallpox has, what happens if that disease becomes loosed in our country in an airplane, similar to what we've had now take place with Ebola? In that scenario, the government, the first responders, all the agencies are devastated within the first 4 weeks. Within the first 3 months, martial law is declared. There's 1 million dead and counting, and 3 or 4 million contaminated. I've got all the slides. The purpose for telling all this is they were practicing bioterrorism against the United States, the people of the United States, in 2001. It's now 2014, and we're at that same juncture. And I just as a byproduct, I used to work. Dave, are you familiar with the book Hot Zone?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last part. Am I still with the what?
The book Hot Zone.
Yes, I am.
Okay, and also the movie Contagion with Dustin Hoffman. I used to work with the people that were involved in the actual incident with Ebola back in the early 2000s with Hot Zone. So what I'm getting to here is it's my firm belief as a former Marine Corps officer and a former operations manager of a biosafety laboratory, level 3, that this entire event is being orchestrated by the globalists. And what I've told Paul for the last several years is once this disease mutates to the form, either a laboratory mutation or a natural transmutation through exposure to different environs, then we'll be in a scenario like we are right now. This thing could be a sputtering sparkler, or it could be another 1911 influenza debacle. And as you're well aware, 20 to 25% of the world population was killed during the 1918 influenza contamination.
Right. This is very similar to, and I have to go back to my notes. I might have been told Dark Winter. I don't recall, and I wasn't prepared for this coming on today. I had a conversation with someone who used to be real high up in AFPAC, Air Force Pacific. Mm-hmm. And this person actually worked with Air Force Owning the Weather 2025, and I've got the documents, and this guy is who he says he is, and he's been feeding me information that's excellent for years. And he told me that they actually had conversations with the Army at Fort Detrick about coordinating activities. And by coordinating activities, let's say you want to order in some bad weather, and right on the heels of it, you would bring in some kind of pandemic release. Have you ever come across anything like that with joint agency cooperation with a 1-2 punch?
Oh, absolutely. And Dave, you and I could talk offline. I would give away too much. But do you know what Marine Force Recon is?
I'm sorry, Paul, can you repeat that because that cut out?
He was asking you if you knew about Marine Corps Force Recon.
Yes, that's been mentioned to me, too.
That's what I used to do. So I'll tell you what, just to help with...
my email address is very public, and I'd like you to drop me a line and just put, Marine Corps Colonel in the subject line, because I get about 500 emails a day. Okay. And it's Dave Hodges at thecommonsenseshow.com, because I think it would benefit both of us to talk.
You bet. I'll get that off you right away.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I can tell you guys can't hear me very well, so I'm going to ring off and listen.
Hey, thanks for calling in, Jim.
Yeah, that was the strangest thing with Jim here, because he was so faint. I had the phone just pressed up to my ear. Almost probably got a blood clot here from this, and I wanted to hear what he had to say. But he said enough there. I heard some of these same things this weekend, almost verbatim. The time is upon us, and one of the things I wish, we had Jim on to talk about right now, where I could hear his response, because what I was told, and what I've been told for a long time, was, in fact, this is what the FEMA guy told me before he bugged out his location. He said that the doomsday weapon, the final card that they'll play, if they can't get what they want through other means, stealing and dealing, they'll just kill everyone with bioterror attacks. And that's what I've been hearing a lot. And so we're really looking at their best shot. And I want people to understand that. We are taking the globalists' best shot right now. This is their trump card. I went through a bunch of false flag scenarios a couple days ago in an article I wrote. And I went through, and let me process these real quickly here. I said, we're not going to see a full-fledged EMP attack in this country. I think we'll see a localized one designed to bring on military martial law following the medical martial law. But the Chinese own this country now because of the debt, and they've been promised for their help in the rollout of martial law enforcement that they get to take the assets. This is why we're giving them solar energy zones, inland ports, etc. And if you have an EMP attack, you've devastated the infrastructure of this country. A nuclear attack, let's say you let off a nuke just for the sake of argument in Chicago, and please, NSA, don't report me because I have no knowledge of an event. But let's just say it goes off in some city. Yeah, you devastate that city, but it's a one-time event, and it doesn't have a long-lasting effect. And so I've processed so many of these false flag scenarios that it really comes down to your pandemic releases are really your most effective if you're really trying to devastate the population, weaken the country, bring the economy to an absolute standstill. This is what it is, because Ebola is the gift that keeps on giving. It's not a one-time event. It doesn't destroy the infrastructure. It destroys the economy, but not the infrastructure, not the resources. And this is why I'm absolutely convinced now that the major threat to the people of this country comes in the form of a pandemic release.
I do, too. I have for a long time. And we've got a caller. Come on, caller.
Yeah, this is Rick out of Colorado.
Hi, Rick.
I think we're leaving out the second book, and as scary as Hot Zone is, Devil in the Freezer kind of goes into the making of how they weaponize things. Just there's a part in the book where they're talking about smallpox. I think it was 1967 or 69, sometime in that era, and I believe it was Germany. And a guy had smallpox, and back then you could smoke in the hospital, and he'd sit on the windowsill and blow it. You could crack the window, and he'd crack the window, and the smoke would go into the floor above. Suddenly they had smallpox on the floor above. I mean, that's how scary that is. And they go into the mouse pox and how they weaponize that, and how they just go into, they take it the next step, and how they're all based on actual stories, and you can see how this is coming. The other thing with making it a pandemic is it makes everybody afraid to work together. I mean, the one thing with, say, 9/11, America bonded together. With the pandemic, nobody wants to be next to anybody else because they may be catching it. It's a fantastic way to separate us. I don't know.
Well, it solves a lot of problems for them, as we've already discussed, and it's psychologically devastating once it gets to a certain level. Would you agree, Dave?
Well, it is, and there are actually some long-term Agenda 21 benefits, and I've written about this fairly recently, but I didn't tie it into Ebola. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you have safety zones. And we're starting to see in some of the TV movies that are dealing with these biohazards the use of the term safety zones where people go to. Well, if you go to the website America2050.org, the plan under Agenda 21 is to have 11 megacities with 6 million people each. That kind of tells you the casualty rate when you subtract 66 million from 315 million. But that's not the point of where I'm going here. Where I'm going is we know that they want us out of the countrysides, the suburbs and so forth. They want us in these stack and pack cities. And what a great opportunity they have here if they do forced medical evacuations to actually position us to be in stack and pack, megacity zones. And the globalists aren't going to miss a beat to enforce Agenda 21. So I do expect at some time this is going to happen. And this isn't just speculation. Let me tell you what else I came across. About 2.5 years ago, I had a guest on my show, and we had done some joint research together on this. And what we had discovered was that the National Football League, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, along with Simon Properties, that's the biggest owner of strip malls and shopping centers in North America, had signed a bilateral agreement with DHS in the time of national emergency to allow their facilities to house quarantined or disaffected people. Well, what a great transition place to send people to as you're going to send them off to the stack and packs. And I kind of see this scenario unfolding in the latter stages of what's coming. Like I said, I really think we need to think big picture, Agenda 21, because if we do, then we can start to make better predictions about what we're going to be up against.
Well, my only question with that is, with the pandemic, that human fear factor of getting near a crowd. I mean, you're not going to have a protest. You're not going to have, people gathering.
True.
So
good point.
I'm trying to figure out how, even with at gunpoint, people not going. In some ways, I see it that it scatters us deeper into, in the middle of nowhere, trying to save our families' butts. And
unless you've really got a vaccine that works, if you want to crowd people together. And let me explain. Very early in the show, I had talked to Paul in the audience about the fact that there's been a vaccine for Ebola that's been worked on for 10 years and was tested 8 years ago. Yet the only thing the media is reporting on is the fact that GSK, after Monsanto, they started vaccine research that's going to take a total of 5 months, which is an absolute medical joke. You cannot do a vaccine safely in 5 months. But nonetheless, it looks like they're positioning to have two different vaccines. And what I suspect is the one from 8 years ago is the one that really works. And I'll elaborate on that when we come back.
All right, people, stay tuned. We'll be right back with Dave Hodges. Don't touch that dial.
Oh, can you go ahead and give out Dave's
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Paul Martin, sitting in for Randy Yarborough. We're here with Dave Hodges of thecommonsenseshow.com. If you go to the commonsenseshow.com, top right-hand corner, you'll say, Listen to Dave. Sundays, 9 p.m. to midnight Central Time, his radio show. You be sure and listen to that. All right, go ahead, Dave. Well, we've got a caller. Hang on, we got a caller. Go ahead, caller.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, gentlemen. This is Gail, and I have a quick comment or question for Dave and Paul, both of you guys. It would seem to me that we have several scenarios at work. There's the Luciferian element that wants to see people suffer a horrific death and the fear that goes along with that in a pandemic. But to me, it does not make sense for those who would like to come in and gain access to our infrastructure to have it all tainted with Ebola corpses, Ebola garbage, yada, yada, yada. To me, a neutron bomb seems to take care of that question. I am kind of conflicted as to how this could play out, only because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to make the populace sick and nasty with a long-range cleanup prospects. Why not just use a neutron bomb? You can go in, take over everything you want, and not have any mess to clean up. That's kind of my question. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think they always give themselves immunity, and by that I mean when Bush got the Patriot Act passed and all these other unconstitutional actions, they actually got something else passed which gave Bush and his fellow compadres immunity. And if you use a neutron bomb, that's a crime against humanity. And if these perpetrators are ever caught, you have the Nuremberg trials and they get hung. Ebola is a natural, quote-unquote natural or appearing natural situation, and it's a lot harder to ascribe, guilt and prove that guilt with a natural pandemic release. Now, I do agree with you to some degree about, let me put it this way. I do agree with you to a point that Ebola could be messy because of all the dead bodies, but I submit this has already been planned for. 5 years ago on my show, my news director, Annie DeRiso, ran a news item, and we're trying to run that down again today, which Gary, Indiana officials were upset because the federal government was making them store 400,000 FEMA coffins. I spoke with Doug Hagman this morning, and he's coming out with this on his show today, that FEMA coffins are on the way to Chicago. And also, Sherry Wilcox, a good friend of mine, actually found FEMA coffins about 60 miles outside Atlanta, tens and tens, if not hundreds of thousands. And I've run the pictures on my website several times with Sherry in the picture. So I think the mass casualty rate coming from Ebola is already underway in terms of planning for the inevitable.
Okay, and I agree with you, Dave. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that, there should be any kind of a neutron bomb. I'm just thinking from the sense of there's an element that really loves to watch the death and dying portion. Yeah. That's that Luciferian element. There's the other side of it, those that just want to enrich themselves. I think of Russia and China and others who would just like to come in and get the booty. They're not going to care about the war crimes aspect of it. They're just going to want to come in and clean house.
But when you're doing it to yourself, when you're doing it to your own, that's a different matter. But, I think you're right about one thing with regard to the messiness of Ebola. And maybe and I've considered this too, maybe they'll just let the Ebola go so far. See, we're going to have mandatory vaccines. The whole point of having the CDC own the patent is to make money off the treatment, because then you're messing with their intellectual property when you treat it. The NIH owns the patent for the original Ebola vaccine by Crucell. They're going to make money off of that. Bill Gates has put money into the whole process. He'll get money out of this. Let me share with you a show I did 5 years ago, and then again last week with Greg Evenson, who's a decorated former Kansas State patrol officer. And I asked Greg on my show, I said, this is 5 years ago, I said, Greg, I've got friends of mine, and by the way, they're in Colorado, fairly high up in law enforcement. One of them just retired. And they told me that they did these mock DUI-style roadblock drills 5 years ago in preparation for the H1N1 mandatory vaccines that were going to be rolled out. And they had this mock scanner device. Didn't really work, but they had scanned someone. They would tell them if they had the vaccine. Then they were instructed to tell them, well, you either take the vaccine here or we board you on a bus and take you to containment. And they were told that they would separate men, women, and children. And they had chase cars in the wings, so if you saw the roadblock and turned around, they'd run you down. And I've heard this from two Colorado officials, so I asked Greg about this on my show, and Greg said it's not just Colorado. It's all across the country. And Greg and I were on the Hagman and Hagman report last Thursday, and Greg, I reminded Greg of that, and he said, those procedures are still in place, which is what I've been told. The drills aren't being actively practiced today, from what I understand, but they've been reminded by DHS to have their protocols up to date. We're going to have mandatory vaccines, and I think it's very likely, and it's just my speculation, but I think there's two vaccines for a reason. The one vaccine that was developed 8 years ago, and now they've scrubbed the Crucell website since I've run the information, I think that's the real vaccine that may do some good. I think the vaccine that's going to do nothing but harm people is what's being developed right now by Monsanto/GSK Tecumara Labs out of San Diego. I think that's going to be rushed into market, and that's going to be the really nasty one. And we know how bad the H1N1 vaccine was with the adjuvants of MF59 and squalene. It destroyed the central nervous system of a lot of the people that took it. This is what I think we're going to see. So you might be right, Gail. It's a possibility they won't let Ebola go that far. They'll just have contained releases in segmented communities to get medical martial law, and then they'll start killing people off with the vaccine. And that's a real possible scenario.
Well, and I can see them allowing the Ebola to go so far and then doing the allowing for or doing the EMP to shut everything down so they can come in and clean up without it being proliferated across airways or computers and warning people. And I can see that very much as playing a role in this. So I just am, just continue to pray, guys. People need to be wise and stock up and tell your friends that they need Jesus, because, quite frankly, there's a lot of people that won't get out of this alive.
Well, Jesus is the great antidote to what we're facing, because the globalists at their core are Satanists. They're into child sex trafficking, child sacrifice. Man. They are Satanists through and through. So, I totally agree with your advice.
Well, thank you, guys, and God bless you both.
Thank you.
Take care, Gail.
You too. Bye-bye, Paul.
Yeah, Paul, one of the other things that Gail triggered my memory on is we could have all hell breaking loose on the surface, and the elite are underground, just kind of biding their time. And let me tell you the justification for this belief. Back in 2011 in Denver, it was a multi-agency drill. I'll cover this when we come back about Operation Mountain Guardian.
All right. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back with Dave Hodges.
Are you prepared for the coming chaos? Whether you are planning a strategic retreat or you have one in progress, Square Root Construction would be pleased to offer our assistance. With nearly 30 years of construction experience, Square Root Construction can help with design, engineering, and permitting issues, as well as a host of general contracting services from foundation to finish work. For a limited time, we are offering exclusive discounts to the listeners of Randy's program. For a no-obligation consultation, please call Doug at 303-517-8742 or drop an email to strategicretreats@gmail.com.
Did you see the size of that commission? That certainly was a large commission. Where's the gold? It's a very, very big commission. Where's the gold?
At your typical gold dealer, you get a lot less gold, and they get a lot more commission. At Patriot, we provide you with more gold and silver with what we like to call the single-digit markup. At Patriot, you get more gold for less.
For all your gold and silver needs, call the Patriot Trading Group at 800-951-0592.
Johnson Box Company at 5203 Federal Boulevard in Denver says you must drive prepared to protect our children. Drive slower, be more alert, and be extra careful when children are near. Remember, they don't always watch out for you. That's from Johnson Box Company at 5203 Federal Boulevard in Denver, serving Denver since 1952. Call 303-477-0909. That's 303-477-0909. Where Roxanne and staff say it's everyone's responsibility to keep our kids safe. But they're on the air because they care for the kids in our community. Walker's Quality Cajun Feed Supply won't sell you anything they don't feed their own pets. We sell quality feed for mice to horses, premium pet food, and wild bird seed, custom cages and supplies at the best prices in town with a 2% cash discount. Feed your animals quality food now or pay your vet later. Ask about our special of the month for KHNC listeners. That's Walker's Quality Cajun Feed Supply, located at 4298 Kipling Street in Wheat Ridge. That's 4298 Kipling Street in Wheat Ridge. 303-424-0305. 303-424-0305.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Martin here with Dave Hodges, thecommonsenseshow.com. My website's revolutionradio.org. And we've got another caller, Dave. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, this is Scott Lowell from Gailton. And I just wanted to thank you both for being on the air and had a couple things to hit off of you.
Go ahead.
Personally, what I've been telling people for about the last 15, 20 years is that when this all hits the fan, they're going to have about 5 or 6 different type of bread activities or false flags, whatever you want to call it, for different things. Biological hazards, terrorism, financial distress, some type of water disaster. So they have it all planned. And I think they're going to do that because people aren't going to be able to actually follow everything that they're doing. So they're going to start going along with it because they're not going to understand it's all one big puzzle and every little piece fits together perfectly.
Well, you could possibly be right.
Now, I also have a question for you. I'm an insulin-dependent diabetic, and I've been taking oil of oregano, olive leaf extract, elderberry, and beta-glucan and colloidal silver for years. And I don't get vaccinated, and even though I have a weakened immune system, I don't get sick. And I think that people need to start looking for alternative things and not trust the medical establishment.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sitting here with a bottle of oil oregano right in front of me right now.
And yeah, we should probably talk about that because I had a guest on my show
battling this Ebola.
Who's an independent distributor for doTERRA. And she was telling me how they're being censored by the FDA. And then Mike Adams and I were communicating this week, and he's getting the same thing. The FDA is sending out letters to natural health care companies, don't you dare mention the word Ebola. And then they banned all these other words. You can't say pandemic. You can't say crisis. I mean, they're basically banning the English language. And here's what's really concerning. If the government really had our best interest at heart, and the FDA really wanted to find a cure for Ebola, you'd think they'd welcome help from wherever they could get when they could research it and find the efficacy of a treatment. But instead, they're preserving the treatment only for CDC and NIH-owned vaccines, illnesses, and their corporate partners at Monsanto and GSK. So it's a tightly knit circle where they're doing a monopoly on what's coming with the Ebola, and they're trying to eliminate everyone else from talking. And this is not just happening with doTERRA, it's happening in every health, food, natural health care industry right now.
Sure. And I think you're spot on in regards to that. And I've been sharing these things with people for now going over almost half my life, and I'm 54. And it just amazes me because our government has been an evil government ever since at least 1913, and I would probably still say 1864. And they have not had our best interest at heart because all they quest for is power and money.
Very well said. The argument for me on that point.
And I think your previous caller and you all also understand that the best thing that people can do right now is get their heart right with our Lord and Savior, because without Jesus Christ, we're already lost.
Absolutely. Thank you for the call.
Well, I appreciate you both greatly. God bless.
God bless. Thank you. Rand Paul, the government is underestimating the potential for an Ebola epidemic in America. Senator Rand Paul, Republican Kentucky, who is an ophthalmologist, warned U.S. officials might be underestimating the danger posed by the Ebola virus on American soil in an interview on the Laura Ingraham show today. This could get beyond our control, Paul said. Well, I got to thank Senator Paul for saying that.
Yeah, but he's shown signs he's controlled opposition, so, take what he says with a grain of salt. The one thing that the globalists want to do is control both sides of the narrative, and I think that's Rand Paul. Rand is not wrong.
Oh, no, he's not. No, this is just breaking a few minutes ago, so I just...
Yeah, and that's why, I tend not to give him more credit than I think he deserves. He's kind of earned his label, as controlled opposition, and I think this is just another angle at this. Before we went to the last break, I was starting to talk about Operation Mountain Guardian in reference to Gail's comments, do they really want a messy cleanup? And I'll propose a scenario where I think a messy cleanup is not really going to bother them. In September of 2011, there was a drill done at Sports Authority Field where the Broncos play, and they did this massive FEMA DHS disaster drill. They took kids out of elementary schools. But more importantly, they shut down DIA for, I almost think, 3 days, if memory serves me correctly. Obama flew in, a bunch of elite people flew in, and they all disappeared for a couple of days. And I think they were rehearsing their bug out for something very big. And it might not be this, but they were clearly preparing for a bug out day. And that was Operation Mountain Guardian. I've written about it extensively, and there's lots of information on the net that people can research. And they did the same drill a short time later at Giant Stadium in New Jersey. And so clearly the elite have planned to do their own bugging out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've been watching here in Colorado. We watched the CIA move in several years ago, and I had a contractor source, Dave, that travels pretty extensively. And a few weeks ago, he got back in country, and he told me that Northcom and DOD were really piling in the groceries at their facilities. And I called John Moore, was telling him about 48 hours later, he had talked to a contractor source of his that only works with flag-grade officers in the Navy, and he asked the question, is DOD and Northcom piling in long-term storage foods? And he said, Paul, they grinned like a Cheshire cat. I knew I was right over the target. So there, as you're talking about this little drill to get the powers that be into Denver, I think you're dead on.
Well, the one thing that people can take heart on in Colorado, I don't know how safe you're going to be above surface, but if there is a safety zone, Colorado might be it, because that will be the next capital.
Oh, absolutely. With that, I mean, they planned on that a long time.
Yeah, the CIA and you have the NSA moving to Utah. It kind of says what the future of Washington, D.C. is now, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, we'll be right back with Dave Hodges and your calls, 877-254-7524. It'll be the last part of the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Phillips, founder of the Green Herb.
Is it me, or have you noticed that personal service is becoming a thing of the past? Is a big store with untrained personnel, or going to a vitamin store and finding several brands of the same herbal product, all at different prices? You don't need to be an herbal expert at the Green Herb. We'll gladly help you decide which of the Green Herb's exclusive products will work for you and work better than anything you buy elsewhere. And we'll give you an old-fashioned money-back guarantee. Come by the Green Herb, located in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, on the I-70 frontage road north, 1 mile west of Kipling, or call 888-765-HERB. That's 888-765-4372, or go to our website at www.thegreenherb.com. It's the Green Herb's policy to give you small-town service in the big city. And be sure to listen to the Green Herb Show with Linda and Dr. Cass every Tuesday at 1 o'clock on KHNC.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone into the world. By this you will know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Yeshua, Jesus, has come in the flesh is of God, and every spirit that does not confess that Yeshua, Jesus, has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of Antichrist, which you have already heard was coming and is now already in the world. 1 John 4:1.
And welcome back for the last segment. I'm Paul Martin sitting in with Dave Hodges, and we're talking about Ebola. A little heads up after I get off the air, I'm going to repost Steve Quayle's interview with Dr. S.M.D. that appeared on the 25th of 2014 edition of the Hagem and Hagem Report. So for those of you that missed it, you can hear that one. Well, what are your parting shots there, Dave?
Well, the parting shots is we all better start talking with each other. And I think there's a lesson to be learned from what's going on in Payson, Arizona, where, the person up there who came in from Liberia should clearly be quarantined and clearly health screened. Of course, treated humanely and with respect, but the fact that people would even defend this practice of self-quarantining is insane. And these people up there who believe this are putting not only themselves at risk, but their families and their community, and ultimately the state of Arizona. And that's where I take exception, because that's where I live. So we need to be vigilant watchers. And the more we speak out in unison, the more we shine light on this criminal organization called the CDC, the more we can force them to do the right thing. Because we've seen it time and time again, Paul, that when we call on and put light on the situations that these people start and what they perpetrate against humanity, they usually back off.
Well, they've done it in the past, haven't they?
They have, and I think that we still have a chance here to really stop this in its tracks if we expose it for what it is. Hey, what about the CDC owning the vaccine? What about our NIH, I'd say, CDC owning Ebola? We need to be asking these questions. And like I said, if you know someone who has come in from Africa, via Europe, you need to report them to your health officials. Call the CDC. Do what I did today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the scary thing about this. I mean, this thing's already mutated 400 times, and no telling how many times since. I got a call last week from a gentleman that was communicating with somebody on the ground over there, and they were literally watching this thing mutate under the microscope, Dave.
Well, that means it's been weaponized. And it's just like Lyme disease. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, Randy Sykes, was on Jesse Ventura's show, and he had a document on the show, on True TV, Conspiracy Theory, and he says, I have here a document that'll show you the Army owns the patent to Lyme disease. And Jesse never touched it. Never touched it. The document stayed out of the discussion. And so I thought, oh my God, they just skipped over this. So I went and I searched for Randy, and I was able to find him on some Lyme disease self-help groups because he has Lyme disease. And I got a hold of Randy, and we put together a show with other microbiologists, and they all came on and said to a person, oh yeah, this is definitely true. The Army owns the patent on Lyme disease. And by the way, Lyme disease is also in the flu vaccine. I hope you people are listening to me.
Well, I'm not taking any. I took it right after I got out of the Marine Corps when we were having that little spell in '77, and my mother was driving me absolutely nuts. So I took this shot, and I'd never been that sick in my life. I was balled up for over 24 hours in pain, and I've never taken one since.
No, and we shouldn't. But, like I said, we are our own last line of defense. And like the people in Payson, Arizona, and the people in, say, Greeley, Colorado, when you know of these cases, you need to report them and make it as public as possible. And don't worry about exposing names, because public health is more important.
Absolutely. Hey, Dave, thanks for coming on today. Great show. We're glad you were here.
Thanks a lot, Paul. My pleasure.
We'll be talking off air. Everybody, prepare, prepare, prepare. Walking the mile, getting right with Jesus, walking the mile, because we're all walking the mile now. God bless. Have a great day.